Shocking twist in Formula One. Christian Horner has finally decided to take Red Bull to court, and the stakes couldn't be higher. Could he actually win? Will he demand a massive compensation package? Or is this the end of his F1 legacy? Don't miss a single second, because what's coming next will leave the entire paddock speechless. Stay until the very end of the video to uncover every detail behind Horner's dramatic dismissal and the legal storm that could shake Red Bull to its core. Subscribe to stay informed about the latest Formula One news. Christian Horner, the architect behind Red Bull Racing's transformation into a Formula One powerhouse, has now taken one of the most dramatic and controversial steps of his entire career, launching an aggressive legal campaign against the very organization he helped elevate to the pinnacle of motorsport. After what insiders describe as a shocking and unceremonious dismissal, Horner has mobilized a formidable legal team, claiming that his sudden removal was not only unjust but in direct violation of a meticulously constructed employment agreement that had been in place for years. The stakes couldn't be higher. He is demanding a compensation some reportedly exceeding $35 million, a figure he insists reflects not only the financial obligations owed to him, but also the immense value he brought to the team over nearly 2 decades of relentless dedication, strategic brilliance, and world championship success. Subscribe to stay informed about the latest Formula One news. Red Bull Racing has responded with firm resistance, categorically denying Horner's claims and asserting that the conditions for any such financial settlement were simply not fulfilled. According to internal sources close to the matter, the organization believes it acted within the legal and ethical framework of its internal policies. Executives are standing their ground, rejecting the idea of a payout and framing the decision to part ways with Horner as necessary and defensible. The resulting standoff is no longer just an internal HR matter. It's a full-scale legal war with potentially massive ramifications for everyone involved, from corporate stakeholders to team personnel to the global Formula One ecosystem. Behind closed doors, the atmosphere is said to be one of mounting pressure and unrelenting tension. Horner's legal team is reportedly preparing to expose what they describe as a web of contradictions and behind-the-scenes power dynamics that ultimately led to his ousting. Their argument goes beyond the contract itself. They plan to highlight patterns of internal behavior, alleged double standards, and even personal agendas within Red Bull's leadership that may have conspired to undermine Horner's authority. This isn't just a battle over compensation. It's a clash over power, legacy, and the hidden machinery of one of the most successful racing teams in modern history. What has inflamed the situation further is the conspicuous silence from both Horner and Red Bull Racing. Neither side has issued a clear or comprehensive statement explaining the circumstances that triggered the fallout. This vacuum of official information has turned the paddock into a hotbed of speculation, with rival teams, journalists, and fans all scrambling to uncover what really happened. Was this simply a contractual disagreement? Or was it the final chapter of a long-building internal conflict that finally exploded into public view? Whispers from within the inner circle suggest that the root causes of the rupture run far deeper than any public performance metrics or race results. Some claim that tensions had been mounting between Horner and other high-ranking figures within the Red Bull hierarchy for months, if not years. These weren't ordinary disagreements over race strategies or engineering decisions. Instead, they were deeply personal disputes, clashes of ego, philosophy, and leadership style. Certain sources even hint at instances where Horner allegedly pushed back against directives from Red Bull's senior board members, leading to escalating friction that eroded mutual trust and made his position untenable. Others describe a climate of growing isolation, where Horner, once the charismatic and unchallenged leader, began to lose key allies within the team. Internal policies may have been cited as the formal reason for his removal, but many believe the real motivation stemmed from political maneuvering, internal dissatisfaction, and an evolving corporate vision that no longer aligned with Horner's leadership approach. There have even been unverified accounts of meetings behind closed doors where decisions about Horner's future were made without his knowledge, indicating a potential orchestration of his exit long before any official notice was given. The shockwaves have rippled far beyond Red Bull's headquarters. Sponsors, partners, and even rival teams are watching closely, recognizing that this legal confrontation could alter not only the internal structure of Red Bull Racing, but also the balance of power in Formula One itself. If Horner succeeds in his legal fight, it could set a precedent that reverberates through every team in the sport, forcing organizations to re-evaluate how they handle executive contracts, dismissals, and leadership transitions. Subscribe to stay informed about the latest Formula One news. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, preparations for an extensive legal campaign are intensifying. Horner is said to be gathering documentation, internal communications, and testimonies from individuals who are willing to speak out, some of whom may still be employed by Red Bull. The threat of depositions, public hearings, and potentially embarrassing disclosures looms large, and the possibility of this matter spilling into the public domain with damning revelations is growing by the day. In the court of public opinion, the battle lines are already being drawn. Fans who once revered Horner as a tactical genius and team-building visionary are now split, with some questioning whether his leadership had become outdated or problematic, while others believe he is being scapegoated by a corporate machine seeking to shift blame for deeper issues. The outcome of this legal battle may not only determine Horner's financial future, it could either reinforce or dismantle his legacy entirely. The silence from both camps is becoming increasingly unsustainable. Pressure is mounting for one side to break the deadlock and reveal the truth behind this dramatic rupture. Until then, speculation will continue to swirl, and every new rumor, anonymous leak, or off-the-record comment will only deepen the intrigue surrounding one of the most dramatic power struggles the sport has ever seen. In a championship world built on speed, precision, and discipline, it is often what happens off the track that defines a team's true strength. And as this high-stakes confrontation continues to escalate, Red Bull Racing may find itself not just fighting for victories on Sunday, but for its very identity. Christian Horner, once the cornerstone of Red Bull Racing's meteoric rise and dominance in Formula One, now finds himself at the center of a stunning and bitter fallout that has erupted into a high-stakes legal and corporate confrontation. Outwardly, Horner has refrained from incendiary comments, choosing instead to project composure. But those within his closest circle speak of a man who is not only furious, but deeply wounded by what he views as an ambush engineered from within the very organization he helped build into a global powerhouse. According to sources with intimate knowledge of the unfolding drama, Horner was entirely blindsided, given no advance notice, no formal charges, no procedural hearing, and no opportunity to respond to any accusations before his removal was swiftly executed behind closed doors. Insiders familiar with the chain of events describe a chilling atmosphere of betrayal, orchestrated by senior figures within Red Bull's upper echelons, individuals whom Horner once trusted implicitly. The decision, reportedly made in secrecy and enforced without warning, has left him reeling. Those close to the situation claim that not only was he denied access to any documentation explaining the reasoning behind the termination, but he also received no communication offering clarity, accountability, or even the courtesy of explanation. There was no internal investigation he was invited to participate in, no process of arbitration, and no acknowledgement of the legacy he created over decades of service. The abruptness of the dismissal has shocked even those with deep experience in the cutthroat world of motorsport management. His legal representatives, widely recognized as a formidable team of employment law specialists, have come out forcefully. They contend that Horner's dismissal was executed in blatant violation of the terms laid out in his multi-year executive contract, an agreement meticulously drafted to include protections against arbitrary termination, due process protocols, and guarantees of fair treatment. According to his lawyers, not a single one of those conditions was met. They argue that Horner was not only dismissed without cause, but that Red Bull acted in a way that ignored the most basic principles of contract law and employment fairness. The team is reportedly assembling a comprehensive legal offensive, confident that they will expose what they believe to be a clear case of wrongful dismissal, with potentially enormous financial and reputational implications for Red Bull. The case is now unfolding across legal platforms in the United Kingdom, where Horner's employment was officially based. Early filings have been made, and legal strategies are being crafted to bring the matter into a broader arena if necessary. Sources suggest that the team is already preparing submissions for potential international legal venues should Red Bull fail to comply with compensation demands. This is not merely a contractual dispute. It has evolved into a fight over principle, legacy, and the fundamental rights of executive leadership. For Horner, it's about far more than financial restitution. It's about defending his name, protecting his legacy, and challenging what he believes to be a coordinated and unjust purge. Among those observing the case from the outside, there is a growing sense that this could become a landmark moment for executive governance within elite sports organizations. Questions are already being raised within the paddock and beyond. What does it mean when a figure of Horner's stature, someone who led Red Bull to multiple world championships and redefined modern team management, can be removed in such an opaque and ruthless manner? What signal does this send to others in leadership roles, not just in motorsport, but across industries where loyalty and performance are no longer seen as shields against political intrigue? The deeper this saga unfolds, the more evident it becomes that this isn't just a professional rupture, it's a personal war. Allies have turned into adversaries. Silence has been weaponized. Legal documents are now ammunition in a broader power struggle that appears to have been simmering for longer than anyone on the outside realized. And at the center of it all is a man who, after years of navigating intense pressure from rival teams, media scrutiny, and internal politics, is now preparing to wage the most consequential battle of his life, not on the racetrack, but in courtrooms across continents. Horner's strategy is not reactive, it is aggressive, calculated, and designed to inflict maximum pressure. The legal filings are expected to demand not just unpaid compensation, but also seek punitive damages, challenge the legality of the boardroom maneuvers that led to his exit, and scrutinize the motives of the individuals who drove the process. Multiple sources indicate that internal communications and board meeting minutes may become key elements in the legal fight, potentially revealing whether Horner's exit was the result of a planned coup driven by rival factions within Red Bull's corporate structure. Meanwhile, the implications for Red Bull are monumental. This isn't just about a wrongful termination claim, it's about credibility, governance, and leadership accountability. A mishandled case could trigger shareholder unrest, sponsor concern, and regulatory inquiry, especially if international tribunals find the termination unlawful. Already, murmurs of internal divisions within Red Bull's global leadership suggest a deeper schism, with factions aligning either in support of Horner or against him, creating a potentially volatile situation at the heart of one of the most successful sports entities in the world. This legal war could stretch for months, perhaps years, dragging into the open a web of internal dynamics, power struggles, and hidden agendas that have long remained beneath the surface. What began as a sudden cold dismissal of a high-profile figure may yet evolve into a seismic event that redefines executive protections across the entire sporting world. For now, Horner remains publicly silent, but behind that silence is a man with a mission, backed by legal firepower, financial resources, and a deep conviction that justice, not just for himself, but for the principles of leadership integrity, is worth every ounce of the fight that lies ahead. What has truly shocked the inner circles of the Formula One world is not just the sudden disappearance of Christian Horner from the Red Bull racing structure, but the extraordinary move that followed, an escalating legal entanglement that now threatens to pull the FIA, the very institution meant to safeguard the sport's integrity, directly into the eye of the storm. Reliable and deeply entrenched sources confirm that Horner's legal counsel has wasted no time. Detailed files have already been delivered to the governing body, containing a labyrinthine account of internal correspondence, contract clauses, board-level communications, whistleblower testimonies, and what is believed to be clear documentation of procedural irregularities. These documents reportedly outline an aggressive, behind-the-scenes campaign to remove Horner, one that bypassed normal governance and was possibly driven by shadowy political interests at the highest echelons of Red Bull's international hierarchy. While the FIA has yet to step in publicly, high-ranking insiders suggest the institution is not merely observing from a distance. Privately, discussions are intensifying. A handful of influential figures within the organization, people who've spent years side by side with Horner shaping the modern era of the sport, are said to be deeply concerned. Some have expressed a belief that the removal represents not only a personal betrayal but a systemic danger, undermining the very principles of meritocracy, continuity, and fairness that Formula One claims to be built on. Behind closed doors, the tone has shifted from cautious curiosity to quiet outrage, with multiple sources describing the atmosphere within the FIA as one of accelerating moral urgency. According to whispers in legal and political circles tied to the paddock, FIA operatives are already compiling an independent review of the situation, discreetly collecting testimonies and legal opinions, and combing through employment and ethical frameworks to determine whether Horner's expulsion violated both internal agreements and the broader standards that govern the treatment of leadership figures in high-profile sporting organizations. The idea of intervention is no longer hypothetical. There is talk, serious strategic talk, of launching a formal inquiry if additional red flags surface, or if Red Bull continues to withhold meaningful information from shareholders, fans, and the broader motorsport ecosystem. As for Red Bull, the corporate facade has remained impenetrable. Their messaging, when it arrives at all, has been stark, cryptic, and clearly scripted by crisis management specialists. All questions are redirected with sterile phrases like ongoing internal considerations or personnel confidentiality, offering no clarity, no timeline, and certainly no accountability. Even senior employees within the wider Red Bull network, those with years of loyalty and internal access, are reportedly being left in the dark, unsure whether the sudden silence is a tactical shield or a sign of deeper structural instability within the company's global motorsport division. The fallout is extending well beyond the walls of Red Bull Racing's Milton Keynes headquarters. Around the globe, veteran team principals, engineers, former drivers, and longtime Formula One executives are quietly reaching out to one another, forming informal alliances of concern. Nobody expected the man who helped steer Red Bull from irrelevance to dynasty, who built a championship culture around some of the most iconic names in modern racing, to be cast aside without ceremony or explanation. The whispers are growing louder, boardroom battles over the team's long-term identity, irreconcilable differences between European and Thai ownership factions, resistance to Horner's influence on future powertrain strategies, even accusations of orchestrated character defamation. All of it now lies beneath the surface of a scandal that is only just beginning to unfold. Supporters of Horner argue that he was not merely a manager or a brand representative. He was a strategist, a builder of legacies, a man who managed to unify divergent engineering philosophies and political interests under a single competitive banner. The manner of his removal, without dignity or due process, has sparked broader questions about the treatment of influential figures in corporate-driven sport. Did he become too powerful for the system he helped create? Was his loyalty to the team eventually seen as a threat to larger corporate ambitions that extended beyond the racetrack? These are no longer theoretical questions. They are the foundation of an unfolding narrative that could reframe the relationship between racing teams and the corporations that finance them. The emotional undercurrent is undeniable. For many inside the sport, this isn't just a story about one man's career. It's about power, control, and the invisible forces that shape Formula One far away from the cameras and podiums. If the FIA acts, it could mark a turning point, a moment when governance reasserts itself against unchecked executive authority. If they don't, they risk becoming complicit in what many are starting to believe is a calculated purge, one that could erode the trust that binds fans, staff, and stakeholders to the sport. The paddock now operates under a cloud of anxiety. Each race weekend brings fresh speculation, more silence from Red Bull, and new signs that the controversy is nowhere near resolution. In fact, there's growing fear that the worst is yet to come. The documents still hidden from public view may expose conversations and decisions that would shake the entire Formula One infrastructure to its core. For the FIA, for Red Bull, and for Christian Horner, the road ahead no longer follows the smooth curves of the racing calendar. It descends into a storm of legal battles, reputational warfare, and a high-stakes struggle for truth in a world where truth is often the last thing revealed. The absence of any concrete explanation from Red Bull has done nothing to ease the growing tension within the Formula One community. On the contrary, it has ignited a firestorm of speculation that grows more volatile by the hour. The silence is louder than any official press release could ever be, and behind that silence, there's a growing belief that something much deeper, much more politically charged, is at play. This is not simply the sudden departure of a team principal. This is something more personal, more calculated, and possibly more dangerous. Whispers from within the sport are multiplying rapidly, suggesting that Christian Horner's exit may not have been the result of a single misstep, but rather a culmination of years of unresolved tension, philosophical disagreements, and carefully hidden internal power struggles. Multiple sources close to the paddock, from technical personnel to former management figures, have indicated that Horner's departure wasn't just about his actions in recent months, but part of a much broader conflict that has been simmering beneath the surface for a long time. What once looked like firm, visionary leadership may have gradually been perceived as authoritarianism by those who wanted to modernize the structure of the team. With Red Bull's ownership dynamic shifting significantly after the passing of co-founder Dietrich Mateschitz, a new layer of executives with their own agendas and strategic priorities began to rise within the organization. As these new power players gained influence, Horner's once untouchable status reportedly became increasingly fragile. Some insiders have even described the atmosphere inside Red Bull Racing's upper echelons as toxic in recent years, with factions forming around contrasting leadership styles and long-term visions. Horner, known for his hands-on approach and tight control over team operations, was said to have resisted various corporate initiatives that would reduce his authority or change the DNA of the team he built. As newer decision-makers aligned themselves with Red Bull GmbH's shifting direction, there was growing friction over everything from financial management to driver development to sponsorship control. And while no official charges or allegations have been confirmed, the persistent rumors of ethical or behavioral concerns continue to swirl. The sheer volume of speculation around alleged misconduct, combined with complete silence from the team, has only made those rumors feel more plausible to the public. But Horner's departure is being interpreted very differently by those who worked under him and respected his leadership. To them, this wasn't a dismissal, it was an ambush. Many individuals who were once part of the Red Bull machine have come forward quietly, expressing disbelief and outrage over what they see as a betrayal of the man who transformed the team into a global powerhouse. From mechanics to engineers to drivers, there's a strong sense that the architect of Red Bull's success was removed without dignity, stripped of his influence, and forced out without even the decency of a public explanation or farewell. The way this unraveling occurred, sudden, opaque, and devoid of any formal recognition, has only deepened suspicions that something highly strategic was happening behind closed doors. Legal voices close to Horner have begun to raise the stakes. According to them, this is not a case of internal restructuring or personal failure. It's a matter of fundamental rights. One of his attorneys recently declared that Horner was not simply removed from a leadership role. He was targeted, undermined, and ultimately sacrificed to protect others or to serve a broader agenda. From their perspective, Horner's dismissal wasn't about performance or behavior. It was about eliminating a powerful figure who no longer fit within the reimagined hierarchy of a company undergoing transformation. That same attorney also hinted that critical evidence exists, messages, internal communications, and legal documents, that may show a clear pattern of manipulation, exclusion, and betrayal. The suggestion is that Horner was isolated from strategic decisions, frozen out of key meetings, and gradually pushed into a corner where the only option left was his exit. Behind the legal language, there's something even more personal at play. Those close to Horner describe him as deeply wounded, not because of the loss of his position, but because of the way it was done. For a man who gave 2 decades of his life to building the most dominant team of the hybrid era, the silence from Red Bull feels like the ultimate rejection. No public thanks, no farewell tribute, no acknowledgement of his contributions. Just silence, cold, calculated, and deliberate. And that silence, according to many, speaks volumes. It suggests that the team may be trying to avoid legal liability, reputational damage, or perhaps even revelations that could compromise key figures still in power. Meanwhile, speculation grows about what Horner will do next. Some believe he will stay silent, reaching a quiet settlement behind closed doors to avoid further conflict. Others are convinced that he will not go down quietly, that he may speak out, file legal actions, or even leak documents that expose the full extent of the internal war that tore Red Bull apart. If that happens, the impact could be seismic. It could shatter public trust in the team, rattle sponsors, and even affect driver morale. In an era where image is everything and perception drives billions of dollars in brand equity, the way this situation is handled could define Red Bull Racing's future. Horner, once seen as the heart of the team, is now portrayed as its greatest liability or its greatest martyr, depending on who you ask. And as long as the silence continues, the speculation will not only persist, it will evolve, mutate, and grow stronger. Because in Formula One, where politics are as fierce as the racing, and where every word or lack thereof is part of the game, silence is never just silence. It's strategy. It's power. It's war. As confidential court submissions begin to emerge and the legal chess game surrounding Christian Horner escalates, the situation is spiraling into one of the most dramatic and consequential off-track events in the history of Formula One. Every hour, behind-the-scenes maneuvering intensifies, and insiders suggest that what is currently visible to the public is just the tip of a much darker, more intricate iceberg. What was once dismissed as an isolated internal conflict is rapidly evolving into a full-blown, multi-layered legal war that may very well redefine the rules of power, accountability, and loyalty at the very top of international motorsport. Privately, legal teams on both sides are reportedly entrenched in a no-holds-barred standoff, with negotiations stalling amid escalating demands, retaliatory filings, and leaked correspondence that hint at a much deeper breakdown in trust. The environment surrounding Red Bull Racing has shifted from one of competitive confidence to an atmosphere of strategic paranoia. Meetings are now held in secrecy, legal advisors have taken precedence over engineers in the team's day-to-day operations, and crisis communication experts are being deployed not only to control the message but to anticipate the fallout from any public disclosure. Behind closed doors, Christian Horner's closest allies are allegedly pushing for a media counteroffensive unlike anything the sport has seen before. There is increasing speculation that preparations are underway for a long-form televised interview in the style of a primetime confessional, a format designed to strike an emotional chord with a global audience and dismantle what Horner believes is a false narrative orchestrated by internal adversaries. Even more audacious is the rumored development of a documentary-style miniseries, potentially involving top-tier production studios, which would reconstruct the timeline of events using dramatized reenactments, private messages, eyewitness accounts, and anonymize testimonies from former Red Bull staff. Such a project, if executed, would be unprecedented in motorsport, not only in terms of scale but in its potential to permanently alter public perception of the individuals involved. This would not be a traditional PR move. It would be a strategic weapon designed to rewrite history and ignite a global debate about leadership, betrayal, and the limits of corporate loyalty in a high-pressure ecosystem. Meanwhile, the potential consequences for Red Bull Racing are staggering. A brand synonymous with cutting-edge performance, aggressive marketing, and championship glory now faces a reputational crisis that could destabilize its internal hierarchy and weaken its once unbreakable grip on Formula One dominance. Investors are beginning to ask uncomfortable questions. Sponsors are reportedly demanding reassurances, and key personnel within the organization are quietly re-evaluating their positions as uncertainty grows. If the allegations and counter-allegations continue to spiral, this could trigger a chain reaction that affects everything from driver negotiations and technical partnerships to regulatory scrutiny from the FIA. Industry veterans are already drawing comparisons to some of the most notorious power struggles in corporate history, noting the unique vulnerability of a team like Red Bull, whose success has always been closely tied to the personalities at its helm. Without Horner's leadership, the team's internal dynamics risk fragmenting, and any perception of instability could be exploited by rivals both on and off the track. Executives from Mercedes, Ferrari, McLaren, and Aston Martin are said to be watching events unfold with keen interest, not out of sympathy, but in anticipation of strategic opportunities that may arise from Red Bull's turmoil. What makes this conflict particularly combustible is Horner's personal commitment to defending not only his financial claims, rumored to exceed $35 million in unpaid compensation, benefits, and contractual severance, but also his fundamental right to clear his name and expose what he sees as calculated efforts to erase his legacy. Those close to the former team boss describe a man who is not just fighting for restitution, but for redemption, clarity, and vindication in a sport that has built empires and destroyed careers with equal speed. This isn't just a high-profile firing. It's an existential fight over power, identity, and control within one of the most competitive environments on Earth. The legal outcome will matter, yes, but what's happening outside the courtroom may prove far more influential. The narrative, the optics, the fallout, and the reshuffling of allegiances could all carry consequences that last far beyond a single season. This unfolding battle is now about who ultimately gets to define the truth in a landscape where perception often matters more than reality, and where the winners are often those who control the story, not just the scoreboard. In every corner of the paddock, from engineers to CEOs, there's an unspoken awareness that this moment could mark the beginning of a new era, one in which the personal battles of executives are no longer kept in the shadows, but aired on a global stage with millions of fans, media outlets, and stakeholders watching every twist. What started as whispers has exploded into a full-scale confrontation that could shift the tectonic plates of the sport. The question now is not whether the damage will be done, but how deep it will go, and who, in the end, will still be standing.